Now, social media has played an important role in how many people access the news. The way in which the social networks showcase news has changed considerably over time as existing platforms such as Facebook, Twitter and YouTube have evolved over time, while newer networks such as Instagram, Snapchat and TikTok have grown in importance. One individual who has been able to use social media to share breaking news and also explain the story in layman's terms is Dan Corder, social media commentator.
In Johannesburg right now is unbelievable, and it's bad news for our country. So Johannesburg again doesn't have a mayor, right, which is pretty alarming. And all of the political parties in power were supposed to meet on Tuesday in a council sitting, which costs R500,000 a pop, by the way, to organize, of our money. So they met and they did not elect a mayor. Here's why. So our politicians love to caucus, right, which is basically they call, hey, can we pause the proceedings? We need to go off amongst ourselves and chat strategy. The kind of chat that surely can happen at any point before the meeting. Like, isn't that your literal job, to prep for a variety of outcomes that are predictable and not need to chat in meeting about it? So it starts at 10 a.m., 500,000 rand of our money to make this day happen. EFF calls for an hour caucus, it's granted. They come back at 11. ANC asks for a 3-hour caucus that is then granted. The speaker says, you know, guys, you seem like none of you have done your homework. You should probably go chat amongst yourselves. So use this 3-hour caucus. Then it'll be lunch. So you'll come back at 3:30 in 4.5 hours. By then, I hope you've all finished chatting and doing your job. They come back, and the minority parties ask for a caucus, by which point the day is over. So at the end of a 500,000 day of our money, where their singular job is to get a mayor for Johannesburg so things like service delivery can be done, potholes can be fixed, electricity can be provided, the most important economic hub in Southern Africa can have things like security provided to the city, and they don't do their jobs. And it just shows that we South Africans are facing such a crisis because our entire political class is so pathetic. All of them. No exceptions. And South Africa's future is coalitions. The ANC is steadily declining in power, which means that there will be no majority in many of these different places, which means that they will have to create alliances between political parties and work together. But no political party seems to have the ability or the interest in making it work.
Dan, what a way of putting politics. Thank you so much for joining us. I see the signature beanies have also been adorned today. What made you start telling the news in the way that you do on social media?
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. Mainly because I am absolutely obsessed with South African news, politics and current affairs. And in a very selfish way, I became annoyed that none of my friends were. So I was like, I need to make some videos so my mates start chatting about something interested in what I'm interested in. But also, I think on a more serious note, I have worried that South Africa is such an interesting and overwhelming place that is so complicated. And even for some of my friends who are bona fide journalists, you probably know this as a news broadcaster and journalist, there's sometimes too much news and information to even take in because South Africa is such a wild place. And so if you're a newbie to South African news, but you want to know, it can be very inaccessible and hard to really dig into. And so I just decided I need to start making, or someone, and we've seen this happen in many other countries in the world, and I just couldn't believe that it didn't exist in South Africa in this way. But I just started talking about the news that I found interesting, using a variety of different skills, I guess, that I've picked up in various things I've done in the last 10 or 12 years of my adult life, and tried to figure out, okay, what is the most important part of this news, and how can I tell it in a way that I would honestly express it to my mates around a braai or on a night out?
So in a nutshell, I mean, I completely agree with you there, talking about how much information there is out there to just dig into. But did you just watch the news and think, well, this is boring. I could do it in a better way, in a more succinct way?
I come from a radio background. I'm currently the host of 5FM's breakfast show, and I've been working on the radio since I was like 20. And I will never forget, Masa, I will never forget at the age of 23, having an interview with a talk radio station who essentially just said, Dan, you're too young. And I come from a university radio background where I did a talk show on a campus radio station while I was doing my honors, and that talk show covered Rhodes Must Fall and got all of the most exclusive immediate interviews and ended up being quoted by Al Jazeera and BBC World Service and all that. I knew that I could do talk radio, but I think that in talk radio, but also maybe in other parts of this country's news system, like, it is done by and for older people. And so young people look around at the news available to them and they think, none of this is made for me in ways that I can understand with my priorities and worries and interests at heart. And when I saw that and realized that, I thought, wouldn't it be wonderful if one day I could get an opportunity to be involved in that kind of media making? And thanks to the internet and TikTok and now YouTube, I've been able to do so.
And describe that to me. You know, initially you said you wanted your friends and family to be as interested in what's going on around them as much as you were. After you did post that first video or the first few videos and you got the reaction that you got, is that what you're anticipating?
I did not anticipate that at all. So I've been obsessed with, firstly, late night American television news for like 10 years. But I mean, there have been patches of projects like that in South Africa, but not to the degree of significance we've seen elsewhere. And in the last 5 years, I've become hyper obsessed with, you know, TikTokers more recently, but also YouTubers in France and in England, like Politics Joe, who've been able to just talk about the news as a young person passionate about the news. But I didn't know, because I've just done apolitical light entertainment radio for my whole life. But fortunately, my wonderful girlfriend, Jessie, one day just said, get over yourself. You can't talk about this kind of stuff to the same extent on the radio, so just do it on the internet. And I was very lucky that it got such a wonderful response.
What have been some of your surprise reactions? I mean, your following has grown tremendously, and you're also doing interviews with politicians now, getting them to do all sorts of crazy things, such as wear your merchandise as well.
I have been surprised by how much so many different types of South African just appreciate solid, accessible storytelling done right on the internet. And it's not just me. One of my dear friends, Zetu Kola, is a superb person at this very same, and I adore her. And I watch all of her videos, and there are others too who are very good. But what I have been pleasantly surprised by is that South Africa's youth are not apathetic. Older people tell us that. South Africa's youth feel hopeless and uncatered for by a media space and a political class. And as soon as a handful of people started being, 30 and under or 35 and under and talking about what really matters to them, then immediately there was this beautiful response, because it's kind of obvious. Us young people are not apathetic. If anything, we care more than older people about the future of this country, because this is the country we've got for, on average, much longer than an older person. And everybody wants a better country for themselves. But I was really, honestly, thank you for saying how quickly the growth has been. I have been totally stunned by it. The fact that we then, after 4 months of TikTok, made it into a show on YouTube that has just blown up also, and then were able to attract all of these mega star politicians, has really been beyond anything I could have predicted. I certainly didn't start the TikToking thinking it would lead to a show on YouTube that would do that so fast. And I think so maybe my biggest surprise has been, I think South Africans have caught up with the rest of the world now, where you can watch whole shows on the internet and feel like it's traditional or legacy media.
I wish I could share more of your content as well. In a bit, I will share a video. But, when we talk about content like yours and Zetu's as well, do you think, it's shifting the needle a little bit when it comes to the youth, that there will be a higher voter turnout by the youth come 2024, and that when you say that there actually isn't voter apathy amongst the youth, because they're engaging you on your content, and they're engaging the likes of Zetu as well?
I do not believe that I can swing millions of people to vote at all. But I do think that the broader project of many young people, many of us, me, Zetu, and others, there are tons of people, Mustafa also on YouTube, who are doing this work, will create a culture. Because I don't think young people are apathetic. I think that they are ill-informed because they've not had a media system that has catered to them. I will never forget, after the voter registration weekend for the IEC, I posted a video just saying, I hope you registered to vote. Here's how you can do it. By the way, it's on the website. It's super easy. It takes less than 10 minutes. And I cannot even begin to tell you how alarming it was. I got hundreds and hundreds of people, young and old, commenting going, oh, I thought because there was a voter registration weekend that the opportunity had passed. I didn't even know that I could just go onto a website at any time and do it. Thank you. Oh, my word, I'll go and register immediately now. And I think that speaks to a miscommunication or a breakdown of information going around in South Africa's media space.
Let's take a look at one of your popular videos from TikTok.
I shave
bald today, and I've committed to only next getting a haircut when Eskom keeps the lights on across the whole country for a full week. Yes, I will only next be allowed to cut my hair when Eskom keeps the lights on for 7 days, a full week without load shedding. Follow my journey as I become Rapunzel, I guess. Like, literally, how long do you think my hair is going to be before I get to cut it? My head is now a visual representation of how much we get load shed.
So, Dan, did you get to Rapunzel status?
I managed to get a haircut. I've just come from a wedding, so I actually probably look vaguely decent. But I managed to get a haircut in the week before the Springboks won the World Cup, because Eskom/the government was like, you know, what would be nice is if we could all be in a good mood before the Springboks face the All Blacks. So yeah, I did get a haircut just before the World Cup final.
When you do TikToks like that and you have these kinds of bold challenges, like I'm not going to shave my hair and everything, it may sound all in jest, but there's actually a greater cause and there's a message that you are trying to put out there.
Yeah, for sure. So I come from a radio background where the golden rule is, how can you do some kind of stunt that proves a point but provides entertainment also? So, I mean, I was like, me not cutting my hair was not a protest. I wasn't like one of those Kumbaya, Zuma must go kind of, you know, white protesters who thought if he didn't cut his hair, Eskom would care. But I did think to myself, if I just shave bald at the beginning of the year and then just don't get a haircut, the longer my hair becomes, the more people will go, yo, Dan's hair is getting out of control. Also, there was no trimming or shaving, so it looked horrible. It was terrible. My poor girlfriend was having a tough time. But that kind of visual reference means that, like, the regularity, the ever-present nature of the load shedding couldn't just go away, because every day people were saying, yo, Dan's looking terrible. Oh, it's because we have load shedding all the time. Wow, can you believe that this whole year we haven't had a whole week without load shedding? Can't believe it. And then every day my hair would remind again. So that was the purpose of it.
I wanted to take a look at another one of your videos. Okay. Well, unfortunately, we do not have time for another video, but I am thoroughly enjoying your chat. And before I let you go, Dan, what's 2024 looking like for you? I know for sure you will be voting.
Oh, yeah. I will absolutely be voting. Definitely. Wider than that, the project of the issue, I was supposed to announce this on the 15th of January, but I guess we're doing it now. But the issue with Dan Corder as a show that exists on YouTube and TikTok and the podcast stream is we're going full time, which is wonderful. We're putting out 3 episodes a week, and we're going to really try to comprehensively help people through what is going to be like the maddest, I mean, rumor has it May 22, but like the maddest 4 to 6 months in South Africa's modern history. And I know that a lot of political parties, I know Rise Mzansi has said 2024 is our 94. The EFF had it up at a conference recently or a muster. But it really does feel like that for a lot of people, late 20s and early 30s. Like, this is a fork in the road moment. And I'm going to be handling my anxiety by really doing this thing full time, which is great.
What would you say some of your big stories were coming out of 2023? I mean, there were many, but if you had to give me your top 3.
I think that RAND manipulation, that whole thing was extraordinary. But I think, so for people who are living under the biggest rock ever, essentially it came out that a raft of major banks, both locally based and internationally based, had colluded to spike the price of the rand, or at least fix it for their own interests. And that distorted the currency market, which meant that the banks were making money while everyday South African traders and beyond were suffering. But the reason why I thought that story was so enormous is because of the enormous misunderstanding that happened. Because this was like finance speak and like international trade speak that I had to call my mates who are economists to make sure that I understood. And so much was misunderstood about that situation. Like, if I remember correctly, there was something about like 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 trillion rands per day that people were earning, or billions. And simple math shows that the people online were believing that these banks were making more money a day than the world's GDP that year. and stuff like that. And I just couldn't believe the lack of literacy and knowledge, but I mean, couldn't hold audience members accountable for that, or members of the public, because they've just never learned. So I thought that was huge. What just happened a few weeks ago with Jacob Zuma and his new MK party could really change the 2024 elections. I think we've all had a vague sense of what's going to happen, but how that plays out with particularly Zulu voters in KZN could change everything. And then the last one, I think, this year has been Phala. I think the scandal around Ramaphosa has taken the sheen off him quite a lot, because everybody, or a large part of the country, liked to think that he wasn't as allegedly corrupt as previous administrations, but that I think has really knocked his popularity. So that's what I would say going into the election.
Well, Dan, keep that content coming, and all the best to you. That was Dan Corder,
Thank you so
social
much.
media commentator.